Right, we're ready to start. Thank you for your patience. Good morning. A big welcome to you all who's managed to fit this event into their very busy conference schedule. My name is Margaret Mullane and I'm the parliamentary candidate for Dagenham and Rainham, and I'm very pleased to be chairing this morning. It's very important, very pertinent, and I know we're going to have some great contributions from you all. We're joined on the panel by Jack Abbott, Labour's prospective parliamentary candidate for Ipswich, Louise, Hutchins, Head of Policy and Public Affairs at the UK Green Building Council, and Olivia Blake MP, Member of Parliament for Sheffield Hallam. I'm going to be strict on time today as we have a short window for what is a huge, important topic. We'll hear 3-minute opening statements from our panel of guests. I'll make a short contribution with a couple of my own questions, and then I'll open it up and invite questions from the floor. It'd be helpful and nice if you don't mind just saying who you are and where you're from when you ask the question, and we'll get a mic out to you. So without no further ado, if I start with Olivia for her introduction.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you. Firstly, hopefully everyone can hear me. I've not lost my voice yet, but that usually happens on day 3 of the conference. But thank you so much for the invitation to speak. Like has been said, I'm Olivia Blake. I'm the Member of Parliament for Sheffield Hallam, but before that I was the Deputy Leader of Sheffield City Council. So I'm able to speak with a bit of experience from both the Council and Parliament experience. So housing is one of the largest contributors to carbon emissions, and we know that, whether that's through heating our homes, having among the leakiest stock in Europe, or whether that's building new ones. While we know that far too few new homes are being built under the watch of this government, at the same time far too many are being built to poor standards and are in need of retrofitting from the moment new residents move in. The next Labour government will inherit a crisis of poorly insulated homes, which has exacerbated the cost of living crisis for so many and kept us reliant on imported gas. That crisis needs resolving as a matter of urgency. It also opens up an opportunity that we must seize to usher in a green jobs revolution through upskilling workers to insulate those homes, delivering whole house retrofits, producing the green energy to heat those homes, supplied hopefully through GB Energy, our publicly owned clean energy company. Letting local councils develop and use their expertise to upgrade the energy efficiency of homes throughout the country and unlocking that huge potential. This must absolutely be a priority for the next Labour government. We must decarbonise housing at scale to meet our climate ambitions, and alongside that we need a coherent industrial strategy to help direct the ambition of local government and partners in industry, especially local smaller businesses as well, to reach our critical decarbonisation mission. But all this is also a clear vote winner. Scaling up retrofitting and eliminating fuel poverty helps us tackle the twin climate and cost of living crises at the same time. This is how we can show the people of this country the level of ambition that we have. And I think it's really important just to finish on how it's so important that we unlock the potential of young people in this as well, as making sure that we have lifelong skills available for people who need to transition from less carbon efficient industries. So yeah, thank you so much, and can't wait for the discussion. I think it'll be really interesting.
Thank you very much. Next, Louise Hutchins.
Hi. So I represent the UK Green Building Council, and that's over 700 businesses, local authorities, public institutions across the country, and we're part of a global network because certainly in Britain, the built environment is the second biggest source of climate emissions. And clearly we know that people just can't afford to heat their homes, small businesses can't afford to heat their businesses. And this is a real crisis, and it's just not true. What Rishi Sunak has been saying, that we just can't afford to make this transition to insulate our homes and buildings and to shift from burning fossil fuels to low carbon energy. It's just not true, and that's why we're calling for a big 10-year mission to upgrade the entire built environment. On the way here, because of the rail strikes, I stopped off at my parents' house, along the way. And I was telling my dad that I was going to speak here at SME for Labour, and he was saying, well, what is it that SMEs contribute to this? We've got a network of dozens and dozens of SMEs as part of the network, and also an innovation forum. So we're gathering together the latest ideas, the latest innovations in technology, but in ways of working as well, in ways of collaborating. And just I was in the office last week, and my colleague said, do you know, we've got this member, and they've created a brick that's got 5% of the carbon that a normal brick would make. And my dad said, when I was 17, I was working in the brick production site in Birmingham. They were literally digging the clay out of the soil, and he was on this brick site, and they were putting them in kilns. And it's been since he was 17, and he's 80 now, to this point now that we've managed to come up with a brick that's 5% of the energy. And that is down to the individual innovation and investment of some of these SMEs. And that's what a government should be investing in. It should be investing in these amazing ideas that can be transformatory. So we need the regulations that Rishi Sunak is scrapping. We need the much higher levels of investment that actually the Labour Party is committing in terms of investing in upgrading our homes. But what we do know, and I'll end on this, is that all of these ideas are going to come under the most incredible assault over the next period of time. We know that the political climate means that Labour's 60 billion over 10 years for investing in energy insulation in homes is going to come under fire. And so whatever part of the political spectrum you come from, and we're not party political, we work for, with parties across the board, everybody needs to be standing up for a much higher level of investment and the regulations that are going to transform the built environment over the next period of time. It's a massive opportunity for climate, for nature, and for the cost of living. Thank you.
Jack?
Thank you. I'll just build on what Olivia and Louise have spoken about today. So I think it's really important as well when we're talking about renewable energy and the move to net zero. We're not just talking about new power and heat generation, but we're also talking about the ways we can reduce consumption much more widely as well. And as been touched on already, we're talking about things like insulation is an absolute key part of that. And I realise we're on fragile ground here a little bit so early on in the conference after the last Tory one, where they accused the Labour Party obviously of wanting to put a tax on meat or fining people for leaving the towns in which they live. And I'm worried now they may accuse me and others of wanting to switch off people's kettles and things like that. But that is not what reducing consumption means at all. It means that if you have more sustainable, efficient housing, you will have to use less energy, and therefore, as been touched on as well, we will spend less on our energy bills. Now, what we're seeing now, and you'll see the Conservative Party blame, obviously, the war in Ukraine for the shocks to the energy market that we've seen. And whilst every single country in the world has been affected to a degree, we have been disproportionately affected by the long-term decisions that the Conservatives made consistently over a number of years, particularly when it comes to things like home insulation. So I'd like to think back to the middle 2010s when David Cameron said, let's cut the green crap. Well, obviously things like onshore wind and solar fell off a cliff, but so did home insulation as well. And the result of that basically has added hundreds of pounds to our energy bills. We've got, as already been said, the worst insulated housing stocks in Western Europe. That was a decision taken nearly 10 years ago, but it was repeated again by none other than Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor just a few years ago, when he canned the Green Homes grant, clawed back the money and didn't replace it with any sort of comparable scheme as well. So every time the Conservatives say, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it, this is a worldwide shock, well, they've set us up to fail as a country. And not only has, as I say, that has had immense impact in terms of our energy bills, but also in terms of the jobs, the skills, the supply chains that we desperately need to upscale. And now again, even in the lead up to the massive energy crisis we saw over the last winter, industry groups were saying to the government, you need a great national effort. You need to insulate as many homes as you physically can between now and the end of the year. Otherwise, people are going to be paying through the nose. Now, what the government ended up doing was, again, a sticking plaster fix over a gaping wound. So they gave out some money in terms of subsidy for people's energy bills, but they should have been spending the money in the long term in making sure that actually save people hundreds of pounds on their energy bills by insulating homes fast and quickly. And again, they should have done that for the lead up to this winter. You may see the energy price gap has plateaued very slightly, but we know for a huge number of households this is going to be completely unaffordable. Once again, they've lost another year in which they should have been insulating houses. So, as I say, we're paying for their inaction, not just over the last couple of years, but for a decade now. The last thing I'd just also very briefly mention, I know we'll get into further conversation, Margaret, shortly, is around battery storage as well, on domestic battery storage on homes. And for me, this is a bit of a silver bullet. If we get this right, then not only does it open up another market economically, but it also joins together all the other activity we've got on our homes, whether it's solar panels. We know we've got EVs that we need to plug in quite rapidly, despite what the government may have announced the other week as well. We've got all this stuff coming online, but we've got nothing marrying it together at the moment because we have not got the industry yet for battery storage. Now, the industry exists, the technology exists, it's ready to go, but at the moment the government are not supporting it the right way. And so if they provide the right mechanisms to support that, we will see other renewable technologies on our housing become much more efficient as a result as well. Again, that will reduce consumption over the long term as well. So, as I said, to go back to what I started with, when we talk about renewables and the switch to net zero, it isn't just about how we're going to generate more power and heat, and that's really, really important, but it's also how are we going to make this much more sustainable, how are we going to take consumption off and hopefully lead to a much more efficient grid and localised energy source as well. So really look forward to opening that up shortly as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That was some very interesting points raised by the panel. Achieving net zero in the built environment can be overstated enough. The UK has 26.4 million homes, responsible for 80 million tonnes of CO2 emissions, the third biggest source of CO2 emissions in the UK. The scale of the challenge is great, and the Tories lack the ambition and they just chase votes. So under their watch, we're all moving away from the future of net zero. They've dropped their imminent plans to introduce biodiversity net gain to the planning system, reneged on air quality policies, are failing to meet the targets in the Environment Bill, and have started unravelling their infrastructure plans. Labour's programme to insulate 19 million homes is a solid place, I feel, to start rowing back these damaging acts, not at least because it's going to slash the energy bills, but it's also for all the hard-pressed families, and it'll create thousands of jobs. But what's it going to look like? It's just not about, which the panel has alluded to, retrofitting existing stock. It's about ensuring all new homes are built to the highest environmental standards. A Labour government will try to put in place requirements for all new homes to be built to high standards. Yes, there are things that this kind of adds on. It's around about 20,000 on construction costs, but this pales into insignificance when you look at the cost of retrofitting a home, which can cost up to 90,000. We can do it, but it's going to take political will. I just thought it'd be interesting to mention in my constituency, to make the point, you can do this and it's not revolutionary. In Dagenham and Rainham, we have a development by Persimmon Homes a decade ago that achieved that. So that, and I'm sure you'll all have great examples from where you live. There is a lot of innovation in the sector, but there are huge challenges. In Dagenham, we're currently trying to retrofit 18,000 homes from the famous 1920s Beckentry estate, but to do one unit costs £65,000. So even if we had a spare 1.7 billion laying around, there's a huge national skills deficit, so we can't deliver it at the pace that we all want. Any plans to decarbonise the built environment must go in hand with upskill and train the local workforces. So I'll ask my first question, then it'll be over to you, to the panel. What role does local and devolved government have to play in ensuring developments meet sustainable criteria and are deliverable in the current climate? I'll start with Olivia.
Yeah. Well, a massive role. I don't think it can be understated. And, as we've been talking about our local plan in Sheffield, we've been talking a lot about this and have been pushing for passive house standards through that, but haven't got very far because I think there's a huge risk for councils as well. But you can look up and down the country at Labour councils, seeing how They're kind of leading the way. For example, Camden's council's planning policy encourages residential developments to meet passive house standards and residential conversions to achieve excellent in the BREEAM, I say BREEAM, it's BREEAM, domestic refurbishment standard. And Leeds, since 2013, has required all commercial developments of 1,000 or more square metres to be BREEAM standard as well, excellent standard. And Exeter City Council as well requires all new council homes to achieve passive house status. So there are councils up and down the country who are trying to make an impact already. The new homes grant, I mean, what a disaster. That could have been a real opportunity if it had been thought through more thoroughly and actually given more powers to local communities to be able to build the systems that they need for whether it's supply chain or skills, or just giving councils the powers that they needed for that. And we have seen some work going on in councils using some central government money, but not enough. And I really think that local authorities have the power to work really well with local businesses to be able to deliver on this, as well as providing opportunities in-house to provide apprenticeships as well. So we know, I think Manchester have got a really great retrofitting apprenticeship scheme as well. So there are councils really trying to do the right thing here, but without the kind of level of investment that Labour are pledging at the next election, and the kind of plan to make sure that every home that needs it is retrofitted, we're kind of waiting for that to happen. And I was on the Energy Bill Committee, which was 72 hours of my life I won't get back, for not much gain, unfortunately, because every argument we had about retrofitting, every argument we had about housing standards kind of just fell on deaf ears, to be honest. And it was just, they were really resistant to community energy projects as well, which have a key role in linking all this together. So we won a little bit of that battle, but we didn't get anywhere on insulation and kind of retrofitting. So there's a lot to do, and I think that we've got some really good examples, but what we absolutely need is a Labour government that allows those examples to become the norm and for us to actually power through and make sure that we're building a good quality system that allows both local government and small businesses to work hand in hand to deliver this.
Thank you. Louise?
I think local government and devolved government have got an absolutely huge role to play, because let's face it, local governments are trusted so much more than national government and so much more than other actors are. Wouldn't it be brilliant if we were able to be back in a situation where every local authority had 10, 20, 30 retrofit officers organising the work on the ground, not just retrofitting the buildings and the homes that they're responsible for, but supporting a long-term approach in the area, an area-by-area approach, so that owner-occupiers were also upgrading their homes, and you had the supply chains and skill sets developed. Wouldn't it be brilliant if those local authorities had the resources to enforce proper standards for rented accommodation? We know that rented accommodation only has to meet the very, very minimal standards at the moment, and the government has just cancelled plans to upgrade standards and require landlords to upgrade their investment properties. But wouldn't it be brilliant if local authorities had the resources to support those landlords and enforce that? Wouldn't it be brilliant if local authorities had the powers that they needed to have local plans that were in line with the national climate budget? We have this amazing Climate Change Act, which was so well fought for. And the next stage of that should have been that all of that national budget should have then been place-based. Every local area should have a budget, and they should be able to make plans based on that. They have no idea whether they're busting budgets or not with their local plans. So we need national legal framework to allow that. Again, the government has been blocking that at every stage in the Levelling Up bill in Parliament, but actually Labour have been supporting it, put their own amendment down. It was defeated in the House of Lords. It's going to come back to the Commons in October. Let's see what happens then, but I urge you all to continue to support that and support the National Party to hold that line. And wouldn't it be brilliant if local authorities also had the powers and support to transform the decline in nature in their areas? We know that those local plans also need to be strategic in ensuring that every new development, every existing development is actually actively contributing to the restoration of nature. Nature is in free fall. Our rivers are full of sewage. We're losing birds and wildlife and hemorrhaging insects. Every local authority should have a role in that, and wouldn't it be brilliant if they had the resources to do that instead of being on the verge of bankruptcy? That's, I think, a really exciting future that local authorities can have. I should just very briefly mention devolved governments as well, because Wales has got this extraordinary piece of legislation, the Future Generations legislation, which means that every decision in their area has a responsibility to be in line with responsibilities of future generations. And while it's taken quite a long time for that to be translated into action, the intent is there, and there's a whole generation of children that are learning at school in a new way with different ideas about the future and their responsibility. And I think that's really exciting. What we really need is more investment from Westminster government to Wales so that they can do their job. I live in Wales, and I must just mention the 20 mile an hour zones. It's absolutely transformed the village that I live outside of. So I think
I need
the local authorities have
want to get the
devolved
audience
massive role. Yeah.
Sorry, Jack.
Well, I mean, to be honest, a number of excellent points already made by Olivia and Louise, and I wouldn't think to add to them too much, to be honest. Like in Ipswich, the Borough Council are doing a phenomenal job of trying to retrofit their housing stock, and it is lifting up the energy efficiency rating of huge numbers of that. But as touched on by Louise as well, you know, the private stock, there's no real imposition on landlords at all to make sure that their home's up to spec, and as a result, again, renters in particular are in an incredibly fragile situation where they're paying through the nose on their own energy bills, and they've got no way out really, and that's a really difficult thing. And I'll just very quickly and absolutely on the point about, you know, local government is the best place to deliver a lot of the stuff we've been talking about here. You cannot micromanage from central government the schemes that we're going to need to see over the next decade. What I would say though is, and Louise has touched on it already, is the fact that local government, as we all know, has been gutted out over the last 10 years. We're already seeing a number of services in Suffolk that have gone from children's centres to health visitors and everything else, but they've had £130 million a year in real terms taken out of Suffolk's local government funding just in the last 6-7 years alone. So that's the real challenge. We can hand down these new powers and responsibilities, and absolutely local government is the best place to deliver them, but unless the right frameworks and the right funding comes along with that, then it all is a bit for nothing. So we've got to be transformative. We have to make sure that not just powers are handed down, responsibilities, but proper structures, support, accountability and investment as well.
Thank you very much. I thought that was very, very interesting. So.